Good morning. It's a glorious Friday here in the city of Sculpture, Little Chicago, Hamilton, Ohio. Operation Pumpkin Weekend. Stone has experienced it firsthand now, driving in here for Operation Pumpkin. I had to set up the board last night at like 10 p.m. We're ready to rock. We're ready to go. I'm Reed Mouse. I'm back from a work trip, and I'm ready to rip. We got a big game this weekend, this Sunday, against the Green Bay Packers, where for some reason Vegas thinks we're 2-touchdown underdogs. I think we should be favorites with Joe Flacco at the helm. But we got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the Bengals, their likelihood. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into what I think this whole. I know you guys are probably tired of the Joe Flacco talk. I get it. I understand it. It's the biggest topic here in town right now. I'm going to dive into what it just means for us Bengals fans, and then we're going to do a little mailbag later. Thank you to everyone. Our DMs are popping off the chain with all the mailbags that we get every single week. We got 3 for you later today. We got headlines. We're going to talk about everything that's happening in the sports. Great night for baseball, especially if you root for this team. But we're excited to go. I don't think I'm going to do as well as Casey did yesterday. On the show, I haven't stopped thinking about when he said, it feels like the teams here are taking a dump on my chest. I haven't stopped thinking about that since he said it. It was truly one of the great moments in Off the Bench, and we've had a bunch here. Stone Shields, producer, back in the producer chair. Stone, I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to have you over to my left. You ready to rip?
Yeah, let's do it, man. We've missed you these past few days. Casey and I, we were able to hold it down, but good to have you back in the chair. That great chair that we were talking about yesterday.
It is. You were mentioning this chair and how hard it is to sit. It is an IKEA chair. I don't even know if it's IKEA. It's a not very well made chair, and the screws get loose, and you've almost got to activate your core to make sure that you don't fall. And speaking of fall, we got fall weather out here. Stone, thank you for having Casey on the show yesterday. It's funny because you guys don't know this, but when you're producing and you call in, and I called in, I was the first call in yesterday, you can see me on our software that we use, and while Casey's just ripping and rolling that 15-minute tirade that he has, he starts laughing because he can see me cracking up at him as he just kept going and he's like the Energizer Bunny. He just kept going and going and going, and I'm cracking up every single time that I feel like he was at the end of a topic. He just reared into it, and he's saying, that's why I think the Bengals aren't any good. And then the Reds sucked. It was truly one of the most enjoyable segments, at least for me, here in Off the Bench and Recent Memory. But we're going to start off this show talking about what we've talked about now for about 4 days, and that is the Joe Flacco thing. Once again, I know you guys are tired of hearing about Joe Flacco being the starting quarterback, and the Bengals made their third in-season trade in franchise history. Think about that. 3 in-season trades in franchise history, and they've all happened in the last 5 years. Carlos Dunlap. Last year we get the running back, and then this year we get Joe Flacco. And I'll be honest, when it comes to Flacco being the quarterback, Stone and Craig and everyone has asked me, do I think this is going to equate in wins? I do think this makes the Bengals better, and I do think that this was maybe the right move, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't know if it's going to make a 5-win team into a 9-win team or a 6-win team into a 10. It's not that. The reason I think that this was a great move, and Joe Flacco, throughout his career, if you don't play into your 40s, unless you're pretty good, though I was surprised in his stats. He's had one season in which he's thrown over 22 touchdowns. He's never had a 30-touchdown season, so his stats aren't all that staggering. The reason I think this is a good move is because, quite simply, emotion plays a major factor into all sports. We saw it last night in the Phillies Dodgers game. You see how important emotion is, and everyone feels bad for the pitcher that made the error. It is such a great factor. And when these human beings are playing, you've got to keep emotion. You've got to keep the fans engaged. And that's what this move did. After 3 consecutive blowouts And Casey's crashing out. I'm crashing out. Every single Bengals fan's like, this team's terrible. Hopefully we get the first-round pick and, we can trade them up and get – like this. We were all the way out as a fan base for the most part. Maybe besides Stone, as he made fun of me for all the different things that I said about what the Bengals should do going forward. This Joe Flacco trade, more than anything, like wind in the sails of an old ship, breathed new life into this. And it might be a disaster. We might march into Lambeau Field this Sunday as 2 touchdown underdogs and get the brakes beat off us as LaFleur and the Packers are coming off a bye week and coming off 2 bad games, and it might be a disaster, and Joe Flacco gets sacked 7 times and throws 3 interceptions. Like, it might be a disaster. But more than anything, it's given us at least new life for 2 weeks, for 2 games. We can sit here like, oh, maybe this will be a different team. Maybe this will be a different organization than what we've seen for the last 3 weeks. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who were probably on the outs going, man, I can't see this getting better. Trey Hendrickson, the offensive line, the defensive, the cornerbacks, all these guys that morale was on the basement floor. And you go out and you get a Super Bowl winning quarterback who, by the way, I think I looked this up. He might be the first quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl that's going to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. Something to think about, which is kind of wild. You breathe just new life, new energy to where it might be a disaster still. Because this team, it doesn't seem like they've got a whole lot of players. It doesn't seem like they're scheming right. But maybe, just maybe, you can keep this season alive and you can play well for a couple weeks. Maybe you win one of the next 2 games and we're all of a sudden looking at this AFC, which the NFL I cannot figure out this year. And you're going, all right, okay, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can keep this season afloat. And more than anything, that's what Joe Flacco does. Stone, I know you are exhausted talking 2 hours a day. And a lot of it is about this Joe Flacco talk. But the biggest takeaway I have, and this might be the last thing that we talk about Joe Flacco for this entire show. The biggest takeaway that I have is that it just kind of rejuvenates a fan base that was lying on the basement floor, rejuvenates a locker room, maybe just a little bit, and it felt like things were kind of slipping through the fingers on this season. That's my takeaway. Do you agree with that take?
100%, and kind of something that you actually mentioned off the air that I totally agree with as well. I think it buys you like 2 weeks, right? Even if you go into Lambeau and it's ugly, you get blown out, then you're like, all right, let's see what he can do. A second start at home, short week, Thursday Night Football, primetime against Pittsburgh. And if you look relatively competent in either one of those games, it feels like, okay, maybe you've got some new wind in your sails. Maybe you can continue to take steps in the right direction and look like a winning football team. It just buys you a little bit more time. Because if you roll Jake Browning out there at Lambeau Field and he gets blown out, I mean, you're gonna lose everybody. And you've pretty much lost almost everybody here at this point. Some people are back on because of the Flacco trade, but you just can't. You needed to spice something up. You needed to change something up. And obviously the organization understood that. Credit to them, by the way, for doing that. Only a handful of in-season trades that they have ever made. I mean, if you would have sat here and said, yeah, the Bengals didn't make a trade and they're rolling Jake Browning back out there, would you have been surprised in the slightest? I know I wouldn't. It would just seem like status quo for Cincinnati if they would have just kept it going with Jake Browning and said, hopefully he gets better. That wouldn't have surprised any of us in that regard. So they had to shake something up. They did. We've talked at length. Well, there wasn't a perfect option. Obviously, there wasn't a perfect option. When you're looking for your 3rd quarterback of a season, there's not going to be a perfect option. This was probably as close to the best option as they could get here with a guy with a lot of experience and certainly lots of question marks. And as I've said a million times, you're just more excited to flip on the TV and at least see, because it's going to pique your curiosity. Even the most negative of Cincinnati Bengals fans, you're going to be like, all right, let's see what this looks like here. Let's see what it looks like. Let's just check in here at the late window at Lambeau Field and just see what's going on. You didn't have that before with Jake Browning. I think the organization needed that, and the locker room, more importantly, needed that as well.
When I was driving in and we had that live show after the news about Joe Flacco, you asked me if I was excited. You asked me, does this breathe excitement into you? Like I just said, this move kind of breathes new life. And I said, no, I'm not excited. I'm not overjoyed. I'm not ecstatic. And I said, the one emotion that keeps bubbling up when I think about this move is what you just mentioned right there, which is curiosity. Like, all of a sudden, I knew what I was getting with Jake Browning, right? It's not going to be a whole lot of deep downfield throws. It's going to be a lot of check downs, slight athleticism, not a whole lot of arm strength. I knew what I was getting there. I'm now curious of what this team looks like with Joe Flacco. I'm curious on that. I'm curious how the team responds to this. I'm curious, maybe more than anything, about what was I can't stop thinking about what was the moment where the Bengals go, all right, let's do this. Because as we mentioned, this isn't the modus operandi, the MO of the Cincinnati Bengals. That isn't what they've done. 3 in-season trades, as far as I've read, in Bengals history. This isn't what they do. This isn't how they operate. So what was the exact moment where they go, all right, we can't keep doing this? I have 2, theories, suspicions on what it was. One is that crazy underthrow at the end of the first half of the Lions game, to where Duke Tobin sitting up in the skybox goes, all right, this can't keep happening. And maybe it was Zach Taylor going, all right, I can't do anything about this. That's my one. My other suspicion, my other curiosity that I'm piqued, is maybe we are giving the Bengals a little too much credit here. Maybe we are giving the Bengals credit for something that they didn't initiate, which is the trade for Joe Flacco. I mentioned this to you on the show yesterday, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this. Maybe I'm taking too much credit away from the Bengals, and I know there's those reports that have come around that they checked in on Drew Lock and all that. But to me, it feels like a more proactive franchise, and maybe it's much to their downfall. The Cleveland Browns knew that they were starting Dylan Gabriel, knew that they had 4 NFL caliber quarterbacks, and none of them are good, but 4 NFL caliber quarterbacks in their QB room. And they go, all right, we got to get rid of this 40-year-old Joe Flacco. Let's start calling people that might need a quarterback, i.e. the Cincinnati Bengals, and see if they want to get them. Do you think I'm off my rocker for suggesting that?
I do. Yes, I do think you're a little off your rocker. I was thinking that yesterday, but I was so grateful and appreciative that you came on the show. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to let him run with this. It didn't surprise me that you would come up with kind of a take like that in your head, to be honest. And there's people in the chat that probably agree with you. Stefanski did actually come out, I believe it was late afternoon yesterday, and was like, yeah, this completely caught us off guard. They were calling, They wanted them, and they were like, okay, we'll make the move. But that would be pretty crazy. If they were outside of the division, maybe I would be like, okay, maybe you're onto something here. But as far as a divisional rival that's in your state, and by the way, you still have to play them another game this year, for the Browns to reach out, that would be a little crazy, in my opinion. But I get it. I'm based on what Cincinnati has done in previous years. Like I hear you. But that would shock me.
Yeah, I guess it's just me trying to grip the idea of the Bengals, who have never done this before, when the Browns have done this before. They have made in-season trades. They have made this opportunity, and clearly they have no use for Joe Flacco anymore. So that was where it came from, was just, all right, maybe I'm not crazy that the Bengals are making this move, but if Kevin Stefanski said it, then I'm clearly wrong here. I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. My wife knows that one. The emotion that keeps bubbling up is curiosity. It keeps peaking is, what does this team look like? What is this Joe Flacco offense going to look like going forward? And we're going to have that for at least 2 weeks. Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin have bought themselves at least 2 weeks of not catching. I mean, they're still going to catch Flacco, imagining what's going to happen this Sunday up in Lambeau Field. But maybe they strike lightning in a bottle, i.e. what Joe Flacco did 2 years ago for the Cleveland Browns, where he looked – I think I often said he didn't look good for the Browns, even though they were winning games, because he kept turning the ball over. But that's the Joe Flacco experience. That is. We're going to keep seeing interceptions. He's going to throw some picks. And I'm just going to warn you guys, he's going to throw picks, and he's going to get sacked a lot. Like, those two things are going to happen. But maybe, just maybe, the arm strength of Flacco and the knowledge there can linger into some big plays with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and I guess that's what we're hoping for. I guess that's what we're hoping for. Do you think the Bengals have any shot this Sunday, Stone?
It's a big number. We'll talk about that on my show. I think they'll probably be within that number. That is 14.5. A shot to win. I don't know. I mean, typically how it works with the Bengals and me, I try to put all bias aside as much as I can, but here, obviously, we're focused on Cincinnati, so it comes through. And even in the most desperate of times, I usually find a way to, by kickoff on Sunday, convince my way that there's a chance that Cincinnati's going to win. For the first time in the Joe Burrow era, I think I was not able to do that this past week against Detroit. Obviously, they ended up losing that game. The score was a little bit closer than it really was, right? That game wasn't particularly close there whatsoever. I think there is an avenue where they could pull off an upset, but I mean, they just need so much to go their way. And, they need to have that big play, whether it's scoring on defense or scoring on special teams or hitting Chase or Higgins for an 80-yard play, winning the turnover battle, making Green Bay one-dimensional. Like, there's a lot of things that need to go their way in order to do it. Green Bay clearly isn't as good as we thought, you and I thought. We sat here and thought they were the best team early in the year after a couple of weeks. But at the same time, they are going to be hungry. They had the tie against Dallas, and then that kind of sat with them into the bye. Now they're fresh. So it's an uphill battle, but I certainly feel better. I'll put it this way. I feel better about Cincinnati having a chance to win against Green Bay this week than I did about them beating the Lions last week. I would have said 0%, really, and you hate to ever say 0%. That's how I felt last week. Now I would say there's a puncher's chance to some degree.
That's that Flacco bump.
Right.
That's that Flacco bump, baby. Yeah. I'll be honest. I think this is, out of all the games we've played this far this year, I think this is by far the lowest chance we have to win. I held on to a little bit of hope that maybe we could just catch the Lions off guard, because there's something about narratives and how quickly they change in this league that I liked where the Bengals were at going in the Lions game, because the Lions had come off 2 blowouts, and they had come off beating the crud, the snot out of 2 teams in a row. Meanwhile, we were coming off the worst 2-week stretch in Bengals history. So if you like conflicting narratives, you would think, hey, this team's firing on all cylinders. This team has no cylinders firing at all. All right, they're going to get blown out. There's something about just the way things flip in a hurry in the NFL. So I was like, all right, maybe we can catch the Lions sleeping. We're at home, everything. This game at all with the Packers, them coming off 2 bad weeks, one week in which their offense looked completely inept against a really good defense in the Cleveland Browns. And then another week where their defense looks completely inept, which a surprisingly decent offense with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott playing very, very well. And then they get a bye. And we're coming off 3 straight weeks. We're going to have a quarterback who just got here 2 days ago. He learned the offense on a car ride. And we're playing at Lambeau Field. Like, all those things don't like our odds. But it's the curiosity that keeps bubbling its way up into why we're going to continue to watch this Bengals game, why we're going to continue to hold on. It'll probably be about 2 p.m. on Sunday, and you're like, you know what? They might got a shot, because that's how it is every week. First 6 days after a game, you're just like, this team's terrible. They're not going to win this Sunday. Then all of a sudden, you hear Welcome to the Jungle one time. You hear the Bengal growl. You listen to, I got a game day playlist that I play all day long. And all of a sudden, you're like, they might do it. They might do it. I don't think they're going to do it. But maybe. But probably not. But who knows? That's basically where we're at. This Sunday, 4:30, or are we at 4? The 4:30.
4:25, I think. I would imagine is the thing. I will say it was kind of a punch to the gut, because Reed in our work group chat every single week sends the Welcome to the Jungle video, and it gets everybody fired up. Certainly gets me fired up. Didn't send it last week.
Exactly. I thought it was bad. Yeah. I actually don't just send that to our work group chat. I go through my phone, and every group chat that I've been in within the past week, it's normally about 15 group chats. I just send it. Yeah. Some are family group chats. Like, I send it in my in-laws group chat, and they don't care. And they just go by it. Some are a lot are work group chats, a lot are friend group. It's just whatever I'm in. I just send it off. I normally send it in the Discord, by the way. Join our Discord if you haven't before. We talk. Reds fans talk all day. Bengals talk a few times a week. We're not as in there as the Reds fans, but it's fun to get in the Discord and hang out with people, similar to the way that people do for this chat right here. But that'll be back on Sunday. That'll be back. Good. I will send. I used to DM the opposing quarterback every week and threaten him.
Oh,
like it was normally like a little like troll joke. Like I think one time like Patrick Mahomes named his kid Bronze. And it was when we played him in the AFC Championship, right when Bronze Mahomes was born. And I was like, oh, you going for Bronze, third place? Because that's, pretty clever, right? Pretty good. Pretty good. What is your takeaway? And I don't know if I know you have some headlines coming up later. What is your takeaway on the way that Jake Browning has responded to the Joe Flacco news? Because some people are saying he seems a little whiny. He seems a little... I don't know. What's your takeaway on the way that Jake Browning has handled this news recently?
Yeah, look, I think, I would have an issue if he was going to sit there and be like, oh, yeah, this is for the better. I'm happy about this move, whatever. I mean, as a competitor, you can't be like that, right? Frankly, I wouldn't want him on the team if he had that kind of mindset where it was like, yeah, it's all right. I wasn't playing good enough. It was time for somebody else to get a shot. You never want that, especially at the quarterback position. I think overall, Jake Browning has handled the situation to the best of his ability, right? He took accountability. He was really beating himself up after the game against Detroit, which, it sucked to see, but rightfully so. He was really, really bad. And I appreciate him being accountable. As far as him being whiny, he's said the right things often, but it's not like when I hear Joe Burrow speak, and I don't want to just, love up on Joe Burrow here, but when I hear him speak, it gets me fired up every time. Even after a loss, I'm like, God, he just said the right thing. He always does, right? And when I hear Jake Browning speak, it's just like, okay, was he whining a little bit? Maybe. He's not a guy that's like, oh, let's rally around Jake Browning. This is awesome. So I think he was accountable, and I don't have issues with it, but I get why people are like, oh, he sounds a little whiny there. He sounds a little ticked off. Yeah, he is ticked off. And, for the record, I just think anytime that I've heard Jake Browning speak, it's not like hearing Nine speak. So that's kind of my takeaway there.
Jake Browning obviously plays and lives and conducts himself with a lot more emotion than Joe Burrow does. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that old video, you never should have effing cut me. You don't see that with Joe. Like, Joe's very even keel, cool. I mean, that's like Joe Burr, right? Joe Shiesty, Joe Cool, all that stuff, all those nicknames that he has is because he's right here the entire time. Jake is very up and down. And I want to say this about Jake. It's pretty clear that he feels wronged, or he feels like he's gotten the shaft over this Joe Flacco trade. And I just want to say that I understand why he feels that. But here in Cincinnati, when you are a quarterback of a franchise, you have to, and he has. He's taken responsibility for the way he has played. But there's also consequences for poor play. When you're not a franchise guy, Jake Browning's not a franchise quarterback, you don't get a long leash. Joe Burrow could play like Jake Browning has played for 9 straight weeks, 10 straight weeks. He could play like that for 2 straight seasons. And we're not going to talk about benching Joe Burrow because we know he's our franchise guy. Rookie quarterbacks on a rookie deal, first-round picks, you give them rope out on the field. You give them, hey, we're going to give you a long leash here, and you're going to play. Jake Browning, quite honestly, regardless of how well he played in 2023, he didn't earn that. He earned 3 weeks. And that's what we got. We got 3 miserable, terrible weeks from Jake Browning. And you could say, hey, you played well for a quarter, and it was the final quarter you played, but they had to make another move. They simply had to because we couldn't keep running you out there, Jake. We knew exactly what we were going to get. And honestly, maybe we don't even know what we were going to get of going up into a hostile environment of Lambeau Field against one of the best teams in the NFL. Like it probably wouldn't have been good. So I understand why he felt the way that he did. And I get that he feels wrong, but he also hadn't earned the right to continue to play, point blank. Hadn't earned that right. Okay, my favorite thing to try, and you're talking about Joe Burrow and his press conferences. He says he gets you fired up. I don't know if I get fired up from a Joe Burrow press conference all that much because he's very monotoned. He's very Yeah, I thought we played really nice today. Like, I thought we played well. Like, he doesn't inspire a whole lot of energy in me. But I'll say this thing, and about Cincinnati and our quarterback, the two guys that the press conferences are often centered around, which is Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. You don't have to ever worry about them saying something wrong. That is a nice thing here in town. Like, through all of the disruption of the Cincinnati Bengals and how well they're ran and everything, you never have to worry about Zach Taylor losing his cool at a press conference. You don't have to worry about it because he always says the right thing. Sometimes you wish there was a little more energy. Same with Joe. Sometimes you wish there was a little more energy, but I don't know what it's worth, but you don't ever have to worry about something being said wrong. Do you think that's true? Like, do you ever take credence and, man, I hope that Zach doesn't put his foot in his mouth on Sunday. I hope he doesn't put his foot in his mouth on his press conference. Do you ever worry about them when they take the podium?
No, not at all. I mean, those guys, they're professionals. They've been around. They've done it. And people bang on Zach Taylor all the time, and I get it. The product on the field is terrible. But it's like, what do you want him to say in these press conferences? You want him to go out there and be like, oh, yeah, we suck. Right. We're probably cooked. I'll probably get fired at the end of the year. I can't win without Joe Burrow. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. And, hopefully I land on my feet elsewhere. Like, no, he has to spin it in an optimistic light and be like, we're going to be all right. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing. I mean, that's why people sit there and make fun of him. It's like, what do you want him to say? What do you want him to say? But, I think those guys do a tremendous job at the podium. And I think part of the reason I like how Burrow handles himself is whenever you see these athletes up there and they're getting interviewed, I think me personally, I don't know how you feel. I'm always like, when the reporter asks the question, I sit there in my head and I go, what would I say here? How would I handle this? Because obviously there's no prep. Like, they're getting put on the spot and they got to give an answer. And I just feel like that kind of aligns with how I would handle things as far as how Joe Burrow does. And I think I like and appreciate that. And then you have guys like, remember when Travis Kelce won the Super Bowl in Vegas and he's screaming Viva Las Vegas? Like, I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, Joe Burrow would never do something like that, right? So, I think those guys do the best they can and handle themselves like professionals. And it's easy, by the way, or easier to do it when you're winning. But how are you going to do it when you're losing? Right. And unfortunately, they've had a lot of experience doing that here over the past couple of years.
It's Colin Will said, because I asked, what's it worth? He says, it's worth absolutely nothing. And you're probably right. It is worth nothing that your quarterback and head coach say the right things at the press conference until it's not. The absolute worst thing that can happen is all of a sudden your head coach and your quarterback are making news, you're making headlines by what they're saying in a negative light every time that a mic is put in front of their face. It's quite honestly what was the derailment of Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. Like, he just always seemed to have a chip on his shoulder. He always seemed to say the wrong thing up there, and it seems like the head coach and the quarterback are at odds. Nick Sirianni oftentimes says the wrong thing, and for a Super Bowl winning coach, you're like, man, can't you just get it right at the podium? Like, it's worth nothing towards the value of your team, but it is worth something. And when things start to derail, like this is seemingly happening right now, you're not adding fuel to the flame by, okay, why did Zach Taylor say this? Like, why is he saying this? Why is Joe Burrow all of a sudden taking shots at the team? Aaron Rodgers always seemingly is taking a shot at somebody, and instead of focusing on the game and focusing on the play, all of a sudden you're focusing on what Aaron Rodgers said about his rookie wide receiver, or Aaron Rodgers said about the defense, or the defensive coordinator, or the head coach, and it's worth nothing until it's not, is all I'm saying. All right, let's do a quick word from our sponsors. I think we have a super chat. Stone, if you want to read that super chat, it's from Colin Will. But we'll hear a word from our sponsors first. The Job Center is now hiring. Start working fast with weekly pay. Flexible shifts and great opportunities at top local employers. Apply in person at any location across 12 states or online at thejobcenter.com. Light up your events with Queen City Screens. Our cutting-edge LED video boards deliver vibrant visuals and crystal clear displays for any occasion. From concert to corporate events, we've got you covered. Visit queencityscreens.com to rent your LED solution today. Queen City Screens, where brilliance meets impact. You got that super chat?
Yeah, here we go. Colin Will, appreciate the super chat. If the Brown family really cares about winning, they need to fire Zach and Duke. and scrap the entire operation. Start with a real head coaching hire and give power to a new general manager. Sadly, this probably won't happen.
Yeah, probably it won't happen. If this goes completely off the rails, I think there is a chance in which we start anew. We start anew. And I want to be on the record saying this. If a team like the Baltimore, like the only thing that I would absolutely jump out of my seat for if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, and they won't do this, but if I was the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens part ways with John Harbaugh, you guys talk about Joe Brady, you guys can talk about all the names you want for a head coach. If the Ravens split ways with John Harbaugh at the end of the season, and I don't think they will, but if they do, I think we need to be immediately all over John Harbaugh. And I think it needs to be a situation where you tell Zach, okay, I'm sorry, this opportunity came up, and you just need to jump at it. You just need to jump at it. That's the one where I would absolutely, hopefully they break the stride of, because it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money to hire John Harbaugh, which, by the way, this doesn't affect the salary cap at all. So it's literally just money that you're going to be paying out of your pocket if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. By the way, owners, they start in the green before a ticket is sold. That's how profitable the NFL is. That's how profitable it is. But I'm with you. I'm clearly Duke Tobin's in over his head, and he's deserved no credit for what he's done over 25 years. And someone new needs to be in here, someone young. In terms of player personnel, I know we don't have a GM, but in terms of player personnel, someone new needs to be here. And while I'm on board with, I think I'm pro Zach Taylor, or more pro than I'm against. But if a guy like John Harbaugh comes available, that's someone that you absolutely break your neck trying to get. Other than that, I mean, Joe Brady. I know some people say John Gruden. I don't know about those, but if John Harbaugh, I'm beating the door down of the Harbaugh household, and I'm trying to get John Harbaugh here because I think he would do a fantastic job here in town. And I would prefer someone older, more experienced, like Mike Vrabel was available last year. Jim Harbaugh was available 2 years ago. Guys like that have success, that can win at this level, and you're not taking a chance on somebody young. Unfortunately, we're going to if we do fire Zach Taylor, it's going to be someone young, more than likely. It's going to be someone young, inexperienced, because that's just what it is. We are the cheapest organization in the league, and we're going to continue to do that. Hopefully we can learn from teams like the Chargers, who had been in a similar route, always underpaying coaches, and then they finally go out and they're like, all right, we're going to pay $15 million for Jim Harbaugh because he's worth it. I don't know what John Harbaugh would make at his next job, but he will get another job if he gets fired, and I hope he does get fired because I don't want him to be the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens anymore, and I would love if he came here. That's the only time that I'm in. Another thing that's funny, as I'm just rambling on here, is the notion that NFL teams, like everyone's like, Mike Brown, sell the franchise. Sell it. Guys, these NFL teams are never going to be sold. The only way in which they're sold, there's two ways, right? Because unlike baseball, where there are some teams that aren't super profitable, every single NFL team, it is a cash cow. Like I just said, you are in the green before you sell a ticket based off these TV deals. None of these teams are going to sell. Their valuations are only going up. The NFL is a rocket ship. The only way in which these teams sell are two ways. One, the ownership's getting old, and they don't have any clear succession plans. Look at the Raiders. Mark Davis doesn't have any kids, anything like that. He will probably sell at some point to somebody, because what are you else going to do? You're just going to die, and it's going to go up for sale anyway. So yeah, you're going to sell it. And then the second is the guys get in trouble. Like who is Dan Snyder? Dan Snyder for the Commanders just sold in recent years. That's the only two ways, is if the ownership is gotten in trouble somewhere else or doing something else, or that they don't have a clear succession plan and they've got to get rid of it. Unfortunately, we're not going to fall in either of those camps. Like the Browns are just going to keep turning it over in their family, and that's just what it is. And I can't imagine the Browns getting in trouble. Hopefully they sell a little bit of ownership stake so we get some, rejuvenated with some capital. But neither here nor there. Let's do mailbag first. We got mailbag, then we have headlines here in the final 20 minutes. Thank you guys for being here. Give us a like. We're going to be live Sunday on a live watch-along, I'll be there watching the Bengals game. I imagine Craig Sandlin will be on there. I haven't ironed out the details of who's going to be on those shows and whatnot. But we will be live for the entirety of the Bengals game, 30 minutes before and up to an hour afterwards. Mailbag, Stone.
Here we go. As always, appreciate everybody for sending in these questions that we get to read here on the show. First mailbag question comes in from the Real Spirit Cat. He says,
"Ooh, the Real Spirit Cat."
I know, a very loyal supporter and a loyal fan. We certainly appreciate him very greatly. Here we go. Dear Off the Bench, the Philadelphia Eagles seem like the best team and best roster in football. Last night they got blown out, their second loss in a row. Despite having a good quarterback, an elite line, and a running back, their offense can't figure it out. What are your thoughts on the Eagles' chances at repeating as Super Bowl champions?
Thank you for sending in that question, Spearcat. Reminder, these are all real questions from you guys that, our DMs are just blowing off the chain. You can get me and Stone's DMs on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. You can email us, whatever. Get these questions in. They are blowing off the chain. Real Spirit Cat, what are the Eagles' chances of repeating? There's not a more curious team in the last 3 years than the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me take you back on the last 3 years of the Philadelphia Eagles. Ready? 2 years ago, they start the season 10-1. And they look like the best team in the NFL. What do they do from that point on after Thanksgiving? I think they get blown out on Thanksgiving, or they lose a close game on Thanksgiving. They go 10-1, so 6 games. They go 1-5 for the rest of the regular season and look terrible in all 6 games. And then they absolutely show no effort and completely quit in their first postseason game that they barely scraped in and get blown out after starting 10-1. Completely no effort in that game. All right. Next year. I forget what they started last year. Do you remember what they started? They start 2-2 or something like that?
It was a bit of a slower start.
It was a bit of a slower start, and they had an early bye. And there were national pundits calling for, hey, Nick Sirianni's lost this. This is too good of a roster based off what they did at the end of the year before, where they went 1-6 or 1-5. Yeah, 1-6 on their last 7 games, and it's terrible right now. They need to get rid of Nick Sirianni, bring in Bill Belichick or whoever, and steer this ship forward. What do? They dominate after their bye week, completely dominate the NFL, and dominate the Super Bowl, beat the Chiefs. And they win. Bring back the entire roster, even get a little bit better on paper. And what do this year? It doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. And I know they have new coordinators and everything like that. It just doesn't look right. And I am not in the business of projecting what's going to happen with the Eagles, because I was way off my rocker the last 2 years. So I don't know what the heck's going to happen with them. There's been reports that there was a conversation between Jalen Hurts, Saquon, and A.J. Brown that lasted 2 hours on trying to figure out why this offense can't mesh. That's never a good sign. Coaches, players meetings, never a good sign. So I don't know what the heck's going to happen with the Eagles. If I had to guess, they're still going to be very good. They're still going to make the postseason. They're still probably going to win a playoff game. But can they repeat? I don't see it. I think that we are bound for a weird NFL season. That's my take. Your take?
Yeah, it's very interesting. We've had the Eagles at the top of our power rankings for a long time. You look at the statistics as a passing offense, they were at the bottom of the league, but they were still winning games. So it was like, okay, we'll hang with them here. And then obviously they drop back-to-back games. I think the real story here, which we'll talk about maybe in headlines or at least on my show if we don't have time for it on Off the Bench, is the Giants, because they were unbelievable in this game. But as it relates to the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, I was never a fan of Nick Sirianni. I didn't think it was a great hire, but then you have to sit there and go, he wins football games, right? And there's a lot of people that say, well, he fits in with Philadelphia, kind of a crazy, rambunctious, cocky city a little bit, and he certainly fits in as it relates to that. He's always been a guy that's been heavily reliant on his coordinators, and obviously he's had turnover at that coordinator position, especially the play caller. Now Patello comes in, Kellen Moore's out, and there's been some growing pains there with the Eagles offensively. Does Jalen Hurts have limitations? People ask that all the time. I don't think so. I mean, the guy, what he's done in the postseason has been unbelievable. Can he make all the throws that a Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes can make? Maybe not, but who else in the league or who else in the world can, right? Nobody. their chances at repeating certainly went down over the past few weeks, but I'm not going to write them off because the roster is so good. They've got players all over the place. Keep in mind they were without Jalen Carter last night. They're on the interior of their defense, which certainly would have helped against a rookie quarterback. Didn't have him. The biggest question mark for me with the Eagles is their corners. Quinyon Mitchell, their top cover guy, went down last night, and then they had Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson in there as their corners, and those guys just simply can't play. So I would expect Howie Roseman to make a move trying to add a corner before the deadline at some point. I'm not going to fully hit the panic button on the Eagles, but I think we can take them out of our top 5 at least for now as it relates to the power rankings.
Yeah, God bless the power rankings crew. I know I've done power rankings because it's tough to do right now in the NFL because it feels like that is a game of musical chairs. Thank you so much for Spirit Cat. They keep saying that they want legal representation.
Huh?
Yeah, because they said that we are slandering them. The Spirit Cat says that he's being represented by the great American, Bill Cunningham. So, hey, listen, you guys sent in the questions. Next question.
All right, here we go. Mailbag question number 2. Deer off the bench from Sir Boy Wonder 513. How about it? There are rumors swirling around the water cooler that the Reds will shift controllable starters for a prominent bat. Would you find it wise to trade Hunter Green or Nick Lodolo for a bat this offseason?
So I think this just popped out. Mark Sheldon article suggested that the Reds should trade Hunter Green. And I've heard this now from a few different people that there's going to be big moves, all these things. And I've seen Reds fans say that if they trade Hunter Green, they are done. Because Hunter Green is one of the best controllable contracts in the sport, maybe the best. From a guy, if he's out there on the field, he looks like one of the best 10 pitchers in the league. And you're getting him for about $9 million a year. And you got him for this foreseeable future. And this rotation is elite. This pitching staff is elite. It's why you were able to play in the postseason this year, because the bats were not there. And the idea of trading away what is perceived as, if he's not your best player, he's your second best player. Hunter Green is, a top 2 player on the Cincinnati Reds. A way to improve the lineup at the risk of hurting your rotation seems silly, especially when a team that is budget conscious, trading away probably your best controllable asset right now seems silly. But I'll play devil's advocate here. I will. And I'll ask this question. When you're a team that is trying to compete and you've got a clear deficiency, which is your lineup, and you play in the field that you currently play in, Great American Ballpark, it seems like you should play towards the field that you play in 81 games a year. You see the Rockies do this, that they've really never focused on pitching because it seems like a fruitless endeavor. You see this with the Yankees. They're constantly trying to get left-handed bats or right-handed batters that hit it to the opposite field because of their short porch and right field. The Chicago Cubs are increasingly going after fly ball pitchers because of the way that Wrigley Field is played over the past few years with the wind blowing in. So it seems ideal, or at least the right motion, that you should go towards playing towards your advantages, and you play 81 games at Great American Ballpark. And when you're a budget-conscious team and you can't go out and spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the growing rate for elite bats, you've got to trade what you have. You got to work with the assets you have, and the best asset that the Reds currently have is a controllable ace pitcher in Hunter Green. And on top of this, and this is going to hurt his trade value, is that he does miss time from time to time. So if you're not going to get 200 innings from Hunter Green, maybe you can get 162 games out of an all-star bat. I don't know if it's the right move, but we've seen other teams do this. Milwaukee Brewers traded away their Cy Young caliber arm, Corbin Burns, because they knew that they had other arms in the wings. Now, he wasn't controllable like Hunter Green was, so it's a different story. But you've seen this happen. Nick Lodolo, I think all Reds fans would be more eager to get rid of. But obviously, Nick Lodolo is not going to bring back the same return as Hunter Green. It's an interesting case, and it's an interesting development in Cincinnati if that's what they plan to do. If they go out and they say, hey, we are focused on maximizing our home ballpark. Because also the other side of this is maybe being a team that's centered around run prevention at Great American Ballpark isn't the best way to win games either. But we are going to maximize the field that we're going to play 81 games at. And we still feel comfortable losing either Nick Lodolo, losing Hunter Green with our starting rotation if we can go out and get an all-star bat. Some said MVP level bat, you ain't going to get that. But an all-star bat for control with the player. It's going to be really interesting. It is. If they decide to make that move. And I would challenge Reds fans to do this. Go into that with an open mind. Don't just say, no, we're not doing that. I always get so mad when GMs go, we're not picking up the phone for deals with whoever. You should always be open to anything. No one wants to trade Joe Burrow here in Cincinnati. But if someone calls up, well, maybe not everyone. Stone peaked up. No one in Paycor Stadium wants to trade Joe Burrow. But if a team calls up and if the Commanders call you up and say, hey, we really want Joe Burrow, we'll give you Jaden Daniels and 5 first-round picks, and you're just going to say, no, we're not trading Joe Burrow. Yeah, you make that trade. There's always a price. There's always a price. And I'm just saying, maybe keep an open mind to this. I don't know if it's the right calls. You got to see the deal if they do make that thing. Obviously, there's going to be some moves trading this offseason. It's going to be a somewhat exciting offseason for Cincinnati Reds fans. And I would say be open to the idea and don't just say if they trade Hunter Green, it's a disaster. Maybe see what the return is first. Don't say you can't trade Nick Lodolo. Maybe see what the options are or the return would be before you make your decision on a blanket statement such as you cannot trade Hunter Green because there's always a price. Who knows what you can return? So I'm just saying keep an open mind. Stone, your thought on the idea of trading away one of these controllable pitchers?
I think that was one of your best takes here on the show. That was very well thought out. I really like that. I appreciate it. I agree with you. I think you got to be open-minded. This isn't trade Elly De La Cruz, right? It's one of these pitchers that have had issues staying healthy. They've had injury concerns. Green obviously was excellent towards the end of the year, struggled in the playoff game against the Dodgers. Lots of pitchers probably struggle in that spot there as well. It's all about the return. What can you get for these guys? As you mentioned, the likelihood of being able to sign a massive free agent bat that can hit lots of home runs and kind of help uplift your offense here this offseason, probably not very likely. But if you move Hunter Green or Nick Lodolo, the return there possibly could help you out offensively. Great point about the ballpark. Reds got to find ways to hit the ball over the fence a little bit. The Blue Jays are proving that you don't necessarily need to do that. Obviously, Vlad's hit some home runs. I understand that. But that lineup, they put together hits. I still think in the postseason that is very, very valuable. But you need to hit more home runs than the Reds did. That is very obvious. You have a hitter-friendly park. They need to find a way to get a new bat on this team. And with their budget, probably can't do that in free agency. Might need to move one of those guys. I'm not eager to do it. I'm not sitting here saying, yes, 100% trade Hunter Green. But put your feelers out there. Understand what could potentially be offered from a different team and then go from there. I don't think anybody should be untradeable besides Elly De La Cruz here in this spot. All right. But you had something to add to that?
No, I was just going to say, the main point is be open to it.
Yeah.
Be open to it and don't just put a blanket statement over. If you trade Hunter Green, that's a terrible decision because sometimes you got to see what the return is first. Yeah. And you should always keep a phone line open. Yep. Yeah. Mailbag.
All right, here we go. Final one from Tay.
Tay.
Appreciate the question, Tay.
Yeah.
I can't figure out this NFL season. Every time I think I know who the best team in the league is, they lose. I can't get a grip on who is elite this year. Do you think we will get new blood in contention for the Super Bowl here in 2025?
That's a really good question, Tay. And that is something that I think everyone in sports media is trying to figure out. And that is, who are the elite teams in the NFL? There are teams, obviously, that are really good. There are teams that are going to be playing in the postseason. But in years past, we could look at last year. Lions, Eagles, Bills, Chiefs. Those were the elite teams, and the Ravens were there too. Those were the elite teams. This year, every time that you feel like you understand who the best team in the league is, oh, it's the Packers after the first 2 weeks. Oh, it's the Lions right now. Oh, it's the Eagles. Oh, it's the Bills. They lose or they look bad in a loss. Like, teams lose, so that happens. But then not only that, they look bad. Like, the Eagles look bad right now. The Bills have looked shaky and obviously didn't win in a division game against the Pats. So I think we are having a year. And what was it, 2017? There's that graphic of the quarterbacks that were playing in the conference championships in 2017. And it was Nick Foles and Case Keenum and Blake Bortles and then, of course, the GOAT Tom Brady. Are we heading to a season like that? No, because I think that more than ever, the quarterbacks across the board are playing pretty well. Like, even like you always talk about who's top 10. Well, there's like clearly an elite 4, and then there's about 12 guys that are all really good on a given week. Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield, like name them. Even you can go down the list to even you can go to heck, Kyler Murray has games where he looks really, really good. So I think quarterback play is at an all-time high in the NFL. And I think this is a weird year. I think this is going to be a year where we change our opinion on who the elite teams are every single week. I don't think it would shock anybody if the Lions have an absolute stinker in the next few weeks. Have an absolute stinker. And then we're like, are the Bucs the best team in the league? Because they keep winning. Oh, they keep winning on last-second field goals. So how can you say they're the best team in the league? Like, they haven't looked good. They haven't looked great. And they haven't earned the credit that the Chiefs, who were winning on last-second field goals last year, they hadn't earned that respect of, oh, you're the 2-time reigning champs. I think we are heading to a really weird year and an exciting year to where the ethos of the league changes week to week. Who you think is good changes week to week. And that's an exciting place to be. That's an exciting place to be to where, yeah, I'd probably say the Lions are the best team in the league right now. But what happens if they lose? Oh, then it's going to be the Bucs. What happens if they lose? Like, it's going to change week to week. And I think it's going to be very exciting to see who's playing in the divisional round and who's playing in the conference championship round. But as I'm saying this, it'll probably end up being Bills Chiefs versus Eagles Rams or Eagles 49ers. Like, it'll just be what we've seen before, even after this exciting year. I think we are in store for some new blood in those conference championship games. So?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with as we continue to go through the regular season. It's going to be, as we do these power rankings every week, we're probably going to be switching up who the teams are up at the top. But there's a lot of teams that are having some success right now, particularly in the AFC South, that have had no real experience in the postseason. Obviously, Lawrence and the Jags have the one come from behind crazy postseason win against Herbert and the Chargers. But beyond that, there isn't a ton of stuff like that. So while I think it's going to fluctuate throughout the regular season, kind of your end point, well, you're going to be able to beat these teams in the postseason because, the Bills might struggle at some point. The Chiefs might continue to struggle with the Lions. I think they're all going to be in the postseason, and who can knock them off in the postseason when they have that experience is the main question here for me, and we'll see. But it does feel more even than it had. I mean, the NFL is so great, right? The parity is usually unbelievable, but usually you can sit there and say, oh, these top teams, they're tough to beat. Right. They're really tough to beat. You don't have that this year. And it feels like there's so many that are in the mix. And like Tampa, we all love Tampa. They're a fun team. Baker should be, in my opinion, the front runner for MVP. But they've had all these one-score games and these game-winning drives. How sustainable is that? Probably not very sustainable, right? So it seems like it's shaping out to be a fantastic year. And ultimately, we'll see if some of these new teams without that experience can hang around in December and January and knock off some of these teams that have kind of been here, done that. And ultimately, that will decide whether or not we have new blood in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's so the NFL always gets credit for its parity, and they should. It's amazing. The worst team in the league, Cincinnati Bengals, can win on any given week. That's what happens in the NFL. But in the same jest, we kind of always know who's going to be a true contender. You get to the postseason, yeah, the Broncos last year looked good and were 10-7. And yeah, the Steelers were 10-7, but they had no chance in the postseason. That's how the NFL has always been. Like the elite teams, the division winners, the teams that win 14, 13 games, those are the champions. Those are the teams more often than not that you can put your dollar on, hey, this team's going to win it. I don't think that's the case this year. Like, I think the postseason might be really interesting. Like, let's take the way it's currently set up. You get a Jags versus Bills first round playoff game, or you get a Colts versus Broncos, or Colts versus Chiefs first round playoff game in the AFC. That's exciting. You get an Eagles versus Rams first round playoff game like we did last year in the divisional round. That's really exciting. And I think for the first time ever, we don't know quite how the playoffs are going to pan out, which is cool. We got 1 minute left here on the show. I've got to go run over. Operation Pumpkin is starting right here. It's right where our office is, and I've got to go set up the board and get some things ready. I know one of your headlines question, and this is the final thing I'll say. What's the Orion?
Yep, Kirk Herring, I believe.
Kirk Herring made a huge mistake last night that lost the Philadelphia Phillies game. By the way, man, I wish we lived in Philadelphia right now for the AM radio circuit today, because it would just be an all-timer. In fact, now that we can stream things on iHeartRadio and all those things online, I guess I just gave a plug to a competitor. But all those things where I can listen to Philadelphia sports radio, man, it'd be an all-time day, because they had a bad day yesterday between losing that game the way they did and the Dodgers and getting eliminated from the postseason, and then the Eagles, the one saving grace, get dominated by a rookie quarterback in a division game. Orion Kirk Herring made a mistake and really compounded the mistake and just rushed the ball. Still had plenty of time to throw it to first base. Throws it home. The dude misses home, and it's just a terrible play. And one of the beautiful things about us here in town, about us, the great majority of human beings, as fired up as you get about it, and as distraught as you'd get as a Philadelphia Phillies fan at that. And yeah, there'll be some idiots that are going to send him terrible, nasty messages. The overwhelming sentiment about that play is, I feel empathy for that pitcher. I feel empathetic for him. That is a terrible spot to be, that he will remember for the rest of his time. And he will be remembered for that for the rest of his professional career. And I hope it's a glorious career. I hope it is a beautiful career. I hope it's long. But he will be remembered for that. And I think it's nice that us as human beings feel empathy for that, because you do have to remember that these are human beings, that guy probably didn't get any sleep last night, that guy is probably woken up today and won't leave his room, because regardless of the nice messages, and there's going to be more nice messages than there are bad messages, there are going to be some bad messages, but that will eat that player alive, that he's gotten to this moment for his entire career, and he makes a mistake like that, and that stuff happens. And I guess the only take that I have from that is it gives me faith in humanity once again, that the overwhelming sentiment is, oh, man, I feel so bad for him. Like I said, there will be guys that give him death threats and all that stuff, which are terrible. But hopefully he doesn't read into those noise, because there are going to be more voices that say, I feel bad for you. I feel for you. I hope that you get back on your feet, and I hope you have a great year next year. I hope you have an amazing moment in the postseason and some future endeavor where, you come in with the bases are loaded with 0 outs and you strike out the side and keep it. That's what everyone's hoping for Orion Kirk Herring. And that'd be a great story to tell someday. But empathy, reminder, it's probably our human being's greatest emotion behind love. Stone Shield Show coming up. I'll see you guys on Monday. Yeah, see you guys on Monday. See ya.
go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. Here we are on a Friday, the weekend just about here. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on the show. Got plenty of stuff to discuss. It was good to have Reed back on Off the Bench today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And here we go, hour number 2 here with my show. Plenty to discuss. Bengals, Packers, late afternoon on Sunday. Do they have a chance? I don't know. We'll see. I feel better about this game than I did than the game last week against Detroit. I don't know how much really that says at the end of the day, but we'll talk about the Bengals game. We'll go through some keys to victory as we typically do on Fridays, and ultimately we'll see what product they put out on the field on Sunday with their new quarterback, Joe Flacco. Also, big Thursday night football game last night. It was a 7.5-point spread. The Giants at home, they took care of business, and hello, Jackson Dart. He looked really, really good in that football game. We speculated that he probably was going to be the guy in New York. New York thought he was kind of made to be a quarterback for the New York Giants, and he certainly lived up to the hype in the game last night against Philadelphia. Is it time for Philadelphia to press the panic button? That's now 2 losses in a row for the Eagles. We'll see, but we'll unpack that game here on today's show. Our weekly college football preview, that's always exciting. One of my favorite parts of the week. Ohio State, Illinois at noon. Alabama, Missouri at noon. 2 absolute bangers there. Top 10 matchup at Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Indiana, and Oregon. Should be phenomenal. Red River, Oklahoma, Texas. Texas no longer ranked, but they are favored, believe it or not, in the football game. Florida and Texas A&M. Florida coming off a big win last week against Texas. They're 7.5 point underdogs on the road at Kyle Field. Michigan, USC, another great game as well. And we will preview all of those games here on the show. MLB playoffs, the Cubbies stay alive as they win these 2 games at Wrigley Field. Back to Milwaukee tomorrow night for Game 5. It was our prediction here that the Cubs would find a way to win that series. Can they come back in the DS down 2-0 and win it? The Reds fans here obviously are very familiar with that, as the Giants back in 2012 were down 2-0, and then they rattled off 3 consecutive wins and beat the Cincinnati Reds. We'll see if the Cubbies can do it. And then a Game 5 tonight should be a great game, great pitching matchup in Seattle. Mariners, by the way, underdogs in the game. Skubal, arguably the best pitcher, one of them. I would say probably right behind Paul Skeens, the best pitcher, second best pitcher in the game. He gets the starts in Game 5, winner go home for both those teams, obviously. And the winner of that will play the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll talk a little bit about the MLB postseason there as well. And our best bets of the weekend. We do it every Friday. Our best bets of the weekend haven't exactly been the best to this point, as we are 9-14. Look, we're going to be open and honest and transparent. 9-14 on the year here to this point. Got 5 of them here, looking for a winning week, and plenty of season left ahead of us as we get to learn these teams a little bit more, and hopefully can help that record out a little bit. But that will close out today's show. Appreciate everyone for being here. Hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. YouTube.com/ChatterboxSports. Well on our way to 20,000 subscribers here at the channel. That certainly is our next goal. And obviously, if you can't hang out with us live, totally get that, totally understand, as it's 11 to noon here on the weekdays. But we will have the podcast that will go up wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, you name it, Amazon. And you can get that the show in podcast form. And plenty of clips go up on YouTube. Plenty of clips go up on social media. Give me a follow at StoneShields_. Give the show a follow as well at the Stone Shields. 100 followers is the next goal for the show's Twitter platform. But let's get right into it. Bengals and the Packers. Let's go through some keys to victory here for Cincinnati against Green Bay. 14.5-point underdogs. As I mentioned at the top, I feel better about this game than I did last week against the Lions, believe it or not, despite the fact that it's on the road at Lambeau Field. I think the Packers are better than the Lions. Maybe not right now. You know, I had the Packers at 1 there after 2 weeks in my power rankings, and they lose the weird game against Cleveland. Obviously, Joe Flacco going to have his second start against Cleveland or against Green Bay in a couple of weeks, and then they tie Dallas, which that was kind of a shock to me. Dak Prescott's been sensational this year. He hangs 40 points in that overtime game against Green Bay. Jordan Love and the offense plays great, but the defense, Jeff Hafley's defensive unit, that's supposed to be a real strength on this team, certainly struggled in that game. But I think key to victory number 1 is very simple. They have to start fast in this football game, whether that means getting the football and going out and scoring points right away or getting a stop on defense right away. And, they were able to get some positive momentum in that first drive last week against Detroit. They need to do that again and need to feel like they have a chance 5 minutes into the game, 10 minutes into the game, okay, this team still has a realistic shot at winning this football game, because the run game we've talked about a lot has been downright putrid for Cincinnati, but they've had to abandon it quickly because they get behind so much early in the game, and they have these massive halftime deficits, and then things really snowball on the third quarter, in the third quarter that you saw last week, and that becomes a serious issue for this football team. So they have to start fast. It's their third quarterback, right, Joe Flacco, and it's a unit that they've really struggled to run the ball. They've struggled to protect. They've struggled to run block. They've struggled at just about anything you could possibly struggle with. And if they're on the road here at Lambeau and they get behind, 14-0, boom, right away, it's going to feel like here we go again, and it's going to feel like the energy is completely sucked out of the team, and they need some positive momentum. They need to go into a halftime where it's like, we are actually here. We're hanging around. We have an opportunity here in this game. The defense gave them a shot to kind of do that last week, and then the interceptions, of course, of Jake Browning completely ruined that early in the third quarter, but they have to have that mojo. They have to have that positive feeling going their way, especially on the road against a really good team. Got to hang in there. Absorb that first punch from Green Bay. Eat it and respond and punch back yourself. And I think starting fast is critical in this game for Cincinnati if they want to win. Also, obviously, have to win the turnover battle. We could say that in our keys to victory every single week if we wanted to, and we could say it previewing any single game in professional football every single week if we wanted to. But with your third quarterback, it becomes even more of a priority, right? Jordan Love, the knock on him in years past is that sometimes he'll throw the football to the other team. He's only done that once so far this year in 2025. It was against the Cleveland Browns, and it was a horrible turnover. Backed up deep in his own territory. He threw it late in the game, and that ultimately is what propelled Cleveland to ultimately win that football game. So some guys are going to have to come up big, whether it's the backers, Demetrius Knight Jr., Logan Wilson, right? I mean, when's the last time we got a play from Geno Stone, right? I mean, the guy simply has been here now for 2 years, and he hasn't done anything. Could he perhaps get a turnover in the football game? You saw it with Jordan Battle early in the year. That certainly was promising, but you haven't gotten anything from Geno Stone. How are the safeties going to play? Can they turn him over? Cam Taylor-Britt, he's been benched several times. He only played sparingly in the game against Detroit. What's the plan there at the corner spot? We'll see. Can he make a play if he has an opportunity? We'll see. Right? Can Josh Newton make a play? Can DJ Turner make a play? Can Dax Hill make a play? Somebody has to pick off Jordan Love in this football game, and they got to do it more than Joe Flacco throwing it to Green Bay. Right? And don't be surprised. We warned you. When they made the trade for Joe Flacco, you feel better about a veteran leading your offense, executing your offense, taking the easy plays when they're there, not forcing stuff. Flacco still throws interceptions now, and don't be surprised if he throws one here in this game against Green Bay. You have to find a way to pick off Jordan Love. The fumbles, right? Punching at the football, right? That's something that you would like to see. Perhaps another strip sack, right? You got one last week. Thought it was, relatively fortunate that you were able to pull one of those off, considering that I thought it was kind of an incomplete pass there, to be honest with you. But Trey Hendrickson's certainly going to have to be big in this game, and they're going to have to find a way to create some turnovers in order to have a chance. Buy an extra possession, right? This isn't going to be something where Joe Flacco comes in here and boom, they're getting first downs left and right. No, they're going to go 3 and out at least once or twice in this football game. Can they steal an extra possession or two by turning over the opposition? That will be critical in this game. Also, can you make Green Bay relatively one-dimensional in this football game? Now, usually, if you're a team and you're saying, I want to make the opposition one-dimensional, that means we're going to load the box and trust your guys in coverage in one-on-one situations to make plays and make them beat you. Well, the problem for Cincinnati here is that their cover guys aren't very good. And do you trust any of these guys in one-on-one coverage? I get they don't have that big alpha receiver, but they've got several dudes. When you're talking about Romeo Doubs, when you're talking about the rookie out of Texas there as well, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft, the tight end. They've got some players now. And do you trust these guys in one-on-one situations? I don't know, right? I don't really, to be honest with you, as far as how they're going to be able to go out there and execute in those kinds of spots. But I think if you allow Green Bay to run it on you and throw it on you, it's going to be a long day. Right, I think you have to try to make them one-dimensional. They've struggled at times to run the football this year, believe it or not. Josh Jacobs, he still scores a lot of touchdowns. They're still very productive down the goal line area, but he's running for, I think, less than 4 yards a carry. Bengals stopping the run last week against the best running back tandem in the National Football League in Detroit. Did a solid job, I think. So if you can make them throw the football, I think that certainly will help you as a Cincinnati Bengals football team here in this game. Make Jordan Love beat you. I don't feel great in saying that because I think Jordan Love's really, really good, and he probably will go out there and beat you. But if you allow them to run the football, open up the play action, take shots down the football field, have success in the screen game, which is really just an extension of the run game, right? It could be a really, really long day for you. I think they need to try to make Green Bay as one-dimensional as possible, and that means they're going to have to lean on their cornerbacks and safeties, which is a very weak point on this football team, and I don't feel great about it, but I feel better about that than I do about the Green Bay Packers running all over Cincinnati and opening the play action and throwing the football down the field there as well. I think you got to try to make them one-dimensional in this football game. Another key to victory is make a huge play. All right, I think there needs to be something in this game where you go, wow, and that means either a touchdown on special teams, right? I really like what Charlie Jones can do on special teams. Haven't seen much this year from him. Touchdown on special teams, touchdown on defense, pick six, scoop and score, right? A big play down the football field, 70-yard touchdown to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. You need something like that, especially in these games where you come in. The NFL, you're a 14.5-point underdog. You need a miraculous play at some point, and you need to prevent the miraculous play on the other side as well. If this Packers defense scores in the game on Sunday, I don't see how you're going to win. If they score on special teams, don't see how you're going to win in that spot either. You need to make one of those plays. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you've got some guys that have done it in the past, right? Charlie Jones has brought back a kick and a punt before in his career. Can he do it again in the game? That certainly would help them take that next step. It allows you to kind of steal some points there, score quickly, provides a spark, provides some energy, and that stuff can kind of carry over into the remainder of a football game there as well. And, there's basic things that you could say each and every week as keys to victory, right? Oh, you got to protect Joe Flacco, and you got to, rush the passer. And those things obviously are going to have to be executed at a high level there as well. But T. Higgins is really, really good at football. Right? And we all know that as Bengals fans. They have to find the way to get the ball in his hands. You paid these guys, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They need to be the focal point of your offense. They need to touch the ball and touch the ball at a consistent rate and a rapid rate, I would even argue. And you could tell that they were sitting there, and Jake Browning certainly was sitting there looking at the stat sheet and going, oh my goodness, we're not getting the ball to T. Higgins enough. And you saw him kind of just try to force it to him in a couple of these games, right? The Denver game, it was, they had some good stuff there early, but then it was like, oh, let's just throw jump balls to T because he's a really tall, big, physical guy. You got to be a little bit more creative than that. But you have to let him impact this football game. He's getting paid a ton of money now, right? The Bengals paid T. Higgins. We all remember that. We all understand that. Use him. They need to do that in this game. And I think there's some matchup opportunities that Cincinnati could have. If there, is a weak point, it's some cover of this Green Bay defense, it would be the cover guys, right? Because they're certainly not weak up front. They're certainly not weak at that linebacker level with Cooper and Quay Walker. I mean, those are some dudes there at that linebacker spot. But in coverage, Bullard, the nickel, he's really good. But, beyond that, I think there's some opportunities there to win some one-on-one matchups with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Shoot, if they're in one-on-one situations, Joe Flacco will get them the football. He understands that. You're going to get a lot of safety help over the top. You got to keep an eye on McKinney, right? He's one of the best safeties in the league, and he's great at, reading quarterback's eyes and getting interceptions. Obviously, not many people in the league better at that than Xavier McKinney. So you got to be careful, but I think there's opportunities here against these cornerbacks of Green Bay for Jamar and T to make some plays. If T's in one-on-one situations, Flacco has to get him the ball because we've seen T. Higgins in the past with Joe Burrow help put this offense on his back. Most notably, you saw it in the Denver game to end the year last year in 2024. It was unbelievable. He needs one of those games, right? I mean, he just hasn't even felt like he's even involved, really, in this Bengals offense. Now, admittedly, it doesn't feel like anybody's really involved, and they're just kind of going out there running a few plays and punting the football or throwing it to the other team. I get that, but T. Higgins needs to be a vital, vital piece in this football game if you do want to have a shot. Now, we'll revisit this game later. The best bet of the weekend, I have not done Cincinnati, the Bengals once this year, even with Joe Burrow, those first two games. Spoiler alert, that is going to be changing here today once we get to the best bets of the weekend at the end of today's show. Big Thursday night football game last night. It was a 7.5-point spread. It was interesting. I was on the Giants. If you were on the Giants as well, well done. 7.5 points, division game on the road or at home for the Giants. It just made a lot of sense. The public was all over Philadelphia. They obviously were looking for a bounce back after the Denver game. And there's a lot to be made about Philadelphia, and we touched on off the bench, and we're going to spend some time on that angle there as well. But I think this game's more about the Giants and more about Jackson Dart. The Giants traded up in the draft to get him. There was people out there, that talk about the draft and, talk about, the NFL football and young quarterbacks, things like that. Were saying it was a mistake to trade up and get a guy like Jackson Dart, that he was more of I think he was picked in the 20s, but some people argued he felt like more of a end of the first round or second round type of player, and he looks like an NFL quarterback. I understand the sample size is small at this point. It was his third start, but he checks off a lot of boxes, and lots of things stood out to me. First of which, execution on third down. It's the money down in the game of football. Everybody understands that. Joe Burrow, part of the reason he is so excellent is because he's so good on third down. Well, Jackson Dart is miraculous, or was miraculous last night on third down. At one point in the game, they were 8 for 10. That's just winning football. And that first drive, things were out of sync. They had the false start, and it was kind of choppy. And then he throws it up to little Jordan Humphrey in a spot where only his player can get it. They make the catch. Next thing you know, a couple plays later, he runs it in for a score, and the Giants simply did not look back from that point on. All right, people talk about the swagger and the moxie that he has, and I think those things are very important in a quarterback, but at the end of the day, that doesn't make him a really good quarterback. It's fun to watch, and it's exciting, and it might make you want to cheer for him a little bit more, but that doesn't make him an elite quarterback. But the energy around him, right? Herb Street alluded to this on the broadcast. At that position, if there was a guy that can offer hope, it could change the total trajectory of an entire franchise, an entire organization, an entire fan base, and an entire city once you have that. And Jackson Dart has that it factor that everybody talks about, where it's like can't really put your finger on it or explain it or know exactly what it means. Jackson Dart has that, and it's very obvious that he does. And it's also very obvious how much Brian Daboll understands the fact that he needs Jackson Dart, right? If you look at Daboll's tenure as the head guy in New York, the first year was a great success. Daniel Jones, they go to the playoffs, they win a playoff game, and everybody's like, oh, Daboll's going to be the guy here. And then the 3 years after that, dumpster fire, tire fire, right? I think a lot of organizations probably move off Brian Daboll in that spot. But the owner was able to, they decided to hang on to him. Joe Shane, the GM, and Daboll, the coach, even the Saquon mess when, he gets traded. They hold on to those guys. They still have belief in those guys. And they understand that if Jackson Dart doesn't play well, they're gone, right? He is their last hope as it relates to sticking around in New York. And he's played well through these first couple of games, had some mistakes definitely on the road against New Orleans. It's not going to be perfect. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to look that good. But he showed a lot in that football game, right? The touch and accuracy down the football field. Right, he can make all the throws from an arm strength perspective, but some of those throws that he layered in there, the touch that he had, right? We all watch Joe Burrow here in this town. I'm not going to say he's Joe Burrow. He certainly isn't, but I'm just saying some of the touch throws that you need to have in the NFL, that Mahomes makes, that Burrow makes, that the best quarterbacks in the game. Brady made him obviously better than anybody. Peyton Manning as well, and he was doing that with those touch throws. The one to the end zone where it was PI, I believe it was on Ringo in the end zone. It wasn't caught, obviously. It was PI. Was it a borderline PI call? Maybe. But it was a dime that was layered in there perfectly over the top of Ringo's head, and only his receiver had an opportunity to catch the football. The arm strength on the out routes to the boundary, incredible. And then, obviously, the scrambling ability is what really was unbelievable in the game. Jackson Dart's a guy that he'll scramble to run, but he'll also scramble to throw, and I think that's what you have to do at the NFL level. He doesn't panic back there. He understands, okay, now I'm out of time. I need to flee the pocket. That's another thing with young quarterbacks where sometimes it's like, all right, the first read's not there. Okay, now I'm going to flee. That's not what Dart does. Or it's not what he did in the game last night. It was, okay, first guy's not there. Second guy's not there. Peek at the third guy. He's not there either. Now I'm going to flee and try to extend, and he did a terrific job of doing that as well. And also, he can lower the shoulder. Right, he can get after it. Now, he needs to do a better job of not being so reckless because, the quarterback position, some of the decisions that he made running the football is just reckless, and that he has a reckless nature, and he's got to, figure that out. He was down on the football field. If you watched the game last night, for a point in that game, he was down. He was in the blue tent. I've never, by the way, seen kind of a situation like that transpire when a guy goes down. The head coach is running over there checking on him, right? He understands, as I mentioned earlier, that his fate with his organization is directly tied to Jackson Dart, and he knew that he needed him out there in order to finish off that game, despite the fact they had a lead at that point. You saw Scadaboo, who we'll talk about in a second, the running back, coming over to check on him there as well. And you could kind of, hear a pin drop in that stadium, at least off the television broadcast, when he was down. And, that's a big hit that he took. He took some big hits running the football. They call it a quarterback power. After that, it's like, what are you doing, Dayball? Like, you're just going to run him after that? That was kind of a head-scratching call for me. But Jackson Dart checking off a lot of boxes here over the course of the last 3 weeks. We'll see if, obviously, he can keep it up. And I think he will. And one more thing about Jackson Dart, and we mentioned this on the show last week, was, Dayball, look, it's tough in New York. Has he made some bad decisions? Yes. Has he gotten some unlucky breaks with personnel? Yes. But he's a football guy, right? He's been around Saban. He's been around Belichick. He knows the game, and I think he can still be a head coach in the National Football League. But I think he made a mistake by not starting him in week 1. And we kind of talked about this earlier in the week, about the debate of, play a rookie guy right away. You're seeing it more and more these days. Or do you let him sit? They didn't really do either, because they let him sit for, 3 weeks? Like, what benefit did he get out of doing that? There wasn't one, really, in my opinion. So if you were only going to sit him for a few weeks, and if you knew, which Dayball did, that his job was directly tied to Jackson Dart, I think he should have started him in week 1, and maybe they have another win or two at this point if he had done that. So that was a bit of a head-scratching decision for me. And this is a guy that played a ton of football. Sometimes you get guys that are drafted where it's like, they were only in college for 3 years, and they didn't play a ton of games, or they didn't play in a big-time conference. Wasn't the case for Jackson Dart. Obviously, as a freshman, he got playing time at USC, and then he started for 3 years in the SEC with Lane Kiffin, which obviously is not a pro-style offense at all, but a league competition, playing against a bunch of NFL guys, played against Alabama a bunch, Georgia a bunch, right? He was ready. If somebody was going to be ready to come in and play right away, it would be a guy like Jackson Dart, who had played a ton of collegiate football in a big-time conference. So I think the one mistake Dayball made was that, he should have been in there and been the guy week 1. Maybe they had promises and assurances to Russell when they signed him. That's all fair if that's the case. I bet Dayball's wishing that he went to him a little bit there earlier as well. We'll see, how this team does, right? I mean, what he was able to do with that receiving core, right? Malik Neighbors, who's viewed as one of the best young receivers in the National Football League, he blows out his knee, and that and Slayton was down too as well, and you're throwing to guys like Wan'Dale Robinson and Lil Jordan Humphrey and Theo Johnson, the tight end, and it's just the personnel on the field was not great. And, he was able to take advantage of that. I do think some of that was, that Philly secondary, particularly those corners when Quinyon Mitchell went down. That's a massive, massive loss. If he's going to miss some time here, he's really that one guy that's kind of like, okay, you can trust him in coverage. But with Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson, So, those corners certainly weren't the best. But Jackson Dart was able to execute at a high level and certainly make them pay in the game, and that was really intriguing to watch. And it was really fun to watch, honestly, as he looks like he's going to be a guy that's going to be a good NFL player going forward. He's got to, keep a good head on his shoulders, not let it get to him, right? Especially in New York. You see it with even here in Cincinnati with a guy like Joe Burrow, who gets insurmountable fame overnight, seemingly. That's going to happen here for Jackson Dart if he keeps playing that way, and it's going to be even more difficult to handle since he's in New York. We'll see if he's equipped to handle it, but he's checking a lot of boxes, and he certainly looks like a great decision by Joe Schoen and Brian Dayball. Now, Cam Scadaboo, the running back who they took in the 4th round, he kind of had an unbelievable run in the college football playoff last year for Arizona State. Had a great run throughout the entirety of the season for Dillingham and those boys at Arizona State last year. He was drafted in the 4th round. I'll do a little hand-up accountability here. I didn't think he was going to be a great NFL running back or a good NFL running back. I thought he was going to be maybe like a goal line guy or a 3rd down guy. And I thought it was a bit of a reach, honestly, to take him in the 4th round. But he appears to be really, really good as well. Did have the critical fumble in in the game last week against the Saints, but they're rolling with him as their running back one. I think Tyrone Tracy is a guy that got a lot of buzz, and it was going to be he was the 1A, and then maybe he gives Scadaboo a chance, but Scadaboo's RB1 on that team. He's a physical dude. He might have a couple screws loose, but he's crazy, and he's really, really good, and he ran with a lot of physicality. Had several touchdowns, obviously, in the game. He's clearly got a great rapport with Jackson Dart, the quarterback, and those two rookies kind of took the league by storm a little bit in the game last night. And, very, very impressive to watch. Big-time win, and really it wasn't very close. It really wasn't very close in the game. They now have their second win this year, and we'll see if they can kind of build on that and maybe, be a threat somewhat in that division. I mean, that division now, with, Philly, who I still believe is going to be an issue going forward. Everybody has a lot of belief in Daniels and Washington. Dallas, they've got holes all over the place, but Prescott playing at an MVP level, that now looks like a really good division in the National Football League if Jackson Dart continues to play at a high level. Really quickly before we move on to our college football preview, do want to look at the other side of that. Philadelphia, that was supposed to be their get-right game on a short week to kind of, calm everybody down in Philadelphia. Obviously, that did not end up happening. A brutal sports day in Philadelphia, by the way, yesterday with losing in extra innings to the Dodgers, the manner in which they did. If you didn't see the clip yet, certainly encourage you to check it out. Feel awful for Kirk Herring, the pitcher, that he was kind of in a tough spot there. It was a tough play to make, and then his body wasn't really angled properly towards first. Definitely should have thrown it to first. Went to home, was a terrible throw. Would have been late, but then the guy misses the plate. So a lot to unpack there. We won't spend much time on that today, but it's certainly a rough day for Philadelphia sports fans yesterday. Hurts, I thought, was fine in the game, right? He hadn't thrown an interception in Lord knows how long. He threw one last night. It wasn't good, and that kind of sealed the game, really, for the Giants. But I thought they did a good job moving the ball down the football field. They've been viewed as a team that can only run the football, and, Hurts, I thought, played well in the game besides that pick. People say there's limitations with what he could do throwing the football, and then he can't throw it in between the numbers maybe. Can he do it as good as some other guys in the league? No, but it's a guy that's a Super Bowl champion, right? And he's played great in big-time games. People, for whatever reason, he's that guy that just want to continuously knock him. No matter what he does, improves out on the football field, and that's something that he understands and is going to have to continue to deal with. But, I think they're going to be fine. Are they, going to be at the top of my power rankings next week? Absolutely not. But do I think they're going to make the playoffs and still very much be a threat? Yes. They were running the ball with Saquon well early in that drive. Clearly, they have to unlock him a little bit more. But then Jackson Dart and the Giants were scoring points right away as they scored 2 touchdowns on their first 2 drives. And then Philly felt like, we got to start pushing the football down the football field here and can't just kind of run the football. So they kind of had to get away from their own style and their own identity as an offense based on what Jackson Dart was able to do for offensively for the Giants. So, I'm not too worried about it. You see some of the statistics coming in, but clearly they have guys in A.J. Brown. He made some big plays in the game. Devontae Smith did as well. Jalen Hurts, along with the pick, did have that deep ball that he missed to Devontae Smith that would have been a touchdown, and that would have changed the trajectory of that game. So those are 2 big mistakes from Jalen Hurts, and I don't want to, completely say that, he's off the hook here, because those were 2 big-time mistakes, and, who knows, maybe the Eagles win if he doesn't make those 2 big-time mistakes. But is the offensive line as good as it has been in years past? Maybe not, but they can still do the tush-push as much as we hate it. It's very effective. They did it 4 times in a row there, the early stages of that football game. It's frustrating, but they execute it better than anybody else does. And I think offensively they'll be fine. Patello, the new play caller, clearly is trying to get his feet wet a little bit here. It's not as clean and not as organized as what you saw with Kellen Moore certainly last year. Sirianni, I've never been the biggest Sirianni guy. He's definitely not a scheme guy. He's more of a rah-rah culture building type of guy, fiery type of guy that's always had to heavily rely on his coordinators to really help take their teams to the next level. Patello, he's struggling. Will he figure it out? We'll see. I thought the one at the goal line was very creative where, Hurts flipped it to Goddard and they had a nice block there on the inside and Goddard was able to take it in there on the goal line. Thought that was a creative play, but I think they'll be all right. Philadelphia, of course, in that city, they're going to be hitting the panic button probably. Sports radio in Philadelphia, probably a mess here today, but I've got a lot of faith in Jalen Hurts. He's going to be even keeled. I think part of the reason why people are freaking out so much is there's a bit of a PTSD element to this, to be honest with you. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl last year, but before that, in 23, they start out 10-1 and then just completely lose everything and play horrible football, and obviously, Jalen Hurts was a part of that there as well. So I think that's why people are kind of hitting the panic button there a little bit with Philadelphia. They'll be fine. They'll be a playoff team, and they'll certainly be a threat in the postseason. My biggest concern, if I'm an Eagles fan, is not what they're doing offensively. It's what is going on the defensive side of the ball. They didn't have Jalen Carter in the game. That's obviously a massive loss. One of the best guys on the interior of the defensive line on any team in the National Football League. Bond, the linebacker, he's going to be just fine. Didn't have his best game last night, but it's at the corner spot, right? That's the biggest concern. And really the secondary as a whole. Makuba, the rookie safety out of Texas, he made some mistakes early on in that game as well. But when you lose Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, who's a really, really good football player, he goes down. Next thing you know, you got Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson out there. Adoree Jackson's only 30 years of age, I believe, but it feels like he's a fossil. It feels like he's been around forever. He's flat out not very good. And then Keely Ringo was phenomenal at Georgia, but for whatever reason, it has not translated to the NFL as they were picking on him last night heavily was Jackson Dart. And he was penalized in the game there as well. So that corner spot, I think it's only a matter of time before you see Howie Roseman make a move for a corner. They're definitely going to trade for one, I think, before the deadline. And I think that'll help their defense out a little bit. So I'm not fully pressing the panic button if I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan. But I definitely think the story of this game is not really the Eagles. It's what Jackson Dart and the Giants were able to accomplish, and it certainly was very, very impressive. All right, let's talk college football here on today's show. Another incredible week. 2 weeks ago, you had one of the best weeks of all time. Last week on paper wasn't great, but there was still crazy good games, as there always is. And there's going to be some more good ones here this weekend. We got 5 games that I do want to preview here on today's show. And we'll start with the 2 noon games. Ohio State at Illinois in our college football top 10 that we do every week. I got Ohio State at 1. Candidly, I don't think it is very close. I think Oregon and Miami are good. We'll talk about Oregon in a little bit, but I don't think they're on the same level as Ohio State. They are 14.5-point favorites on the road in Champaign against Illinois. Not on one of my best bets of the weekend, but I would lean on Ohio State if I had to pick a side there and take the 14.5. I just don't see this game being particularly close. Ohio State's defense is absurd. It's the strongest unit out of any unit in the country. Their defense was incredible last year. Newsflash, they're even better on the defensive side of the football this year. And Matt Patricia is clearly an upgrade over Jim Knowles there as well, calling the shots. You question when coaches go from the professional level to the college level and vice versa, what that jump's going to look like. There's probably been more failures than successes, but clearly Matt Patricia is doing a tremendous job calling the shots defensively for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The front is real. They had to replace all those guys on the front, and the guys that they've brought in are the guys that have stepped up as they now have another year in the system and are ready to be the starters, have been tremendous. Caden Curry's racking up sacks, right? He's been a great player. McDonald, Atkinson, those guys all playing really well. The linebackers, best linebacker duo in the country with Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. Those guys can play in the NFL, and they will, and they'll be very good in the NFL. Caleb Downs, in my opinion, best player in college football, and their corners have certainly improved there as well. They are allowing 5 points per game. That is absurd. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns throughout the entirety of the season to this point. And Illinois, they're ranked 17th. There are some questions coming in about Illinois, like could they, be a dark horse in the Big Ten? And credit to them, they've played well, particularly on offense the past 2 weeks, but I just can't get that Indiana game out of my mind. I understand it was on the road, but they lost by 50 plus, right? They didn't lose by 10. They didn't lose by 20. They didn't lose by 30. They lost by 50 plus. And when a team loses by 50 plus, it's hard for me to get behind them, especially going against the best team in the country here. Again, credit to them. Altmaier, the quarterback, he's a veteran guy. He's had a lot of experience now. He's played well these past 2 weeks. It was an impressive win coming off that blowout loss to Indiana, beating USC. By the way, we'll talk about them in a little bit. Impressive showing from the offense again against Purdue, but they're in a complete rebuild mode. They're certainly not a threat whatsoever there. So I just don't think against this Ohio State defense that they're going to be able to score enough points, because Ohio State offensively, they are going to score enough points. I think Julian Sayin coming in in that Texas game. I think they could have opened it up for him right away, and I think it would have been successful for Ohio State, and I think they would have won the game, and I think it would have been not nearly as close as it was. Obviously, it was a 14-7 game in favor of the Buckeyes there in week 1, but they're beginning to start to open up things more with Julian Sayin and throw the football down the football field. You saw it last week in the Minnesota game. He's ready for whatever comes his way, and they're going to score a lot of points in this game. And against this defense, despite the fact that Illinois has played really well over the past 2 weeks offensively, I mean, the thought of them even getting 20 points in this game is like, I just don't really see that happening. And the thought of Ohio State scoring less than 28 points in this game, I just don't really see that happening either. So not one of the best bets of the weekend. It was the 6th one. We have 5 this week, and that was the 6th one. Ohio State, don't have it on there, but I definitely would lean Ohio State as I think they roll on the road against Illinois and continue their undefeated stretch here. Another great game at noon. This one probably going to be a lot more competitive. Alabama and Missouri. Alabama has certainly woken up over the course of the past few weeks. They have responded incredibly well to the blowout loss in week 1 against Florida State, where they flat out looked completely incompetent and uncompetitive in the football game. Nobody really giving Missouri a lot of credit. I don't know why. I get their schedule to this point has been very favorable. Their biggest win has been against South Carolina, who a lot of people thought could mess around here and potentially be a big-time threat in the SEC. Hasn't really worked out that way. Their quarterback, they've had some injuries there. But this is a team that's going to be really well rested. Their past 2 weeks were UMass and a bye. So, they're going to feel good coming in this game. They're not going to be beat up, while Alabama, on the other hand, this is now their 3rd consecutive week against a top 16 opponent, as Georgia obviously was a top 10 team, and then Vandy coming into Tuscaloosa last week is the 16th ranked team in the country. So Alabama, they're beat up, right? Quay Russaw, they're a really good linebacker. He broke his foot. They're without him. They're really banged up just around the entirety of the football team. That's what happens when you play in the SEC and play really good SEC competition. Alabama's favored by 2.5 points in the game. I don't really get. I feel like it should be a pick'em, right? I think you could even make the argument that Missouri should be favored in the football game. There's a lot of matchups in this game that actually lean towards Missouri. Alabama is 104th in the country when it comes to stopping the run. Well, Ahmad Hardy, if you haven't heard of him, I think he's the best running back in the country, and they're certainly going to threaten Alabama running the football. I said earlier in the week, I'm pretty confident there will be a 40-plus yard game run from somebody on Missouri in this football game. Alabama, just even in the games where they've played really well, they give up big runs because their run fits defensively have stunk. When they need a safety or a corner to come in there and fit a gap, they don't do that, and the running back hits the hole and boom, he's gone. And I think Missouri at one point in this game, or probably more, will have a really, really big run. That obviously works against Alabama, and what has allowed Alabama to kind of really get back in the national conversation here and be viewed at as a team that can make some noise in the college football playoff is the fact that they have Ty Simpson playing quarterback, and he's quarterbacking the best passing attack in the country for Alabama. But Missouri defensively, against the pass, they've been really, really good, leading the country in quarterback pressure rate and completion percentage allowed. Mind you, this game's in Missouri there as well. Defense and run game travels. Passing game doesn't always travel, right? So if Alabama's in a spot where Ty Simpson, isn't able to be as brilliant as he has been these past few weeks, and they're forced to, run the ball or do some different things, it could get a little bit shaky for Alabama. Again, I feel like this should be more of a pick'em, and Alabama, last I checked, was a 2.5 point favorite. They can cover well, but also on the other side of that coin, they haven't seen a receiving core like Alabama's with Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton, all the issues that those boys can present. Bo Perbula, by the way, can move. He's a good quarterback. He was the Penn State transfer. Kind of looks like at this point he should be the starter at Penn State. That's a conversation for a different day, but he can move around a little bit. He's athletic, right? A type of quarterback that Alabama has struggled with in the past. People look at the Vandy game. If you didn't watch the game, you see the score and you go, oh, Alabama, handled business at home like they always do. But they were struggling with Diego Pavia, as they do against quarterbacks that can move around, the RPO stuff. And, Pavia turned the ball over twice in the red zone, and that was the difference in the game. He doesn't make those two mistakes. Maybe, Vandy's able to pull the upset. So if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm very concerned going into this game. It's a noon game, right? Could you possibly have a hangover from the crazy games that you played the last 2 weeks, right, against Georgia and, of course, against Vandy? Oh, and by the way, guess what? next Saturday. That's the third Saturday in October, which means you got Tennessee coming to your place next week. So just an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. If Kalen DeBoer is able to navigate this, he deserves major, major credit if he's able to do so. But he's got to have those boys ready to go, because if they're in a situation where they fall behind early and the passing attack doesn't look like the passing attack of recent weeks, they could be in serious, serious trouble in this football game. And by the way, DeBoer's been great over the course of the past few weeks, and he was great on the road in Athens in between the hedges against Georgia. But barring that game, this is a Kalen DeBoer Alabama squad that has really struggled on the road. Did he silence that narrative against Georgia? Maybe, but we'll see how they look on the road this week against Missouri. That's at noon. That is a fantastic game as well. 3:30, two more bangers. Kind of wish this game was at night, but it's Indiana and Oregon. People view Indiana as, they're kind of a fraud, and here we go again. And they might be borderline fraudulent, but I can assure you they are better this year than they are last year, and that certainly gives them a chance in this football game. Oregon's really good. They're ranked third in the AP poll. I have them at 2, right? I think they're better than Miami, and I think they're that next team behind Ohio State that could potentially give Ohio State the best fight. 7.5-point favorites at home at Autzen Stadium. Oregon's last 42 home games, their record, ready for it, is 41-1. And the only guy to go in there and win is the guy we were just talking about, actually, Kalen DeBoer and that team with Michael Penix. Oregon's excellent. They're good all over the place. Their quarterback's good. Their coach is good. Their defense is good. Their offensive line, which was supposed to be a question because they rebuilt it through the portal. There have been some issues there, if it was going to be, or some questions, I should say. If that was going to be good, that's really good there as well. And I think the key in this football game is Indiana going to be able to run the football? How's that offensive line of Indiana match up against the defensive line against Oregon? Because that defensive line against Oregon, there's some NFL guys there. They're big, they're athletic, they're fast, and they're pretty solid rushing the passer and solid against the run. Now Northwestern a couple of weeks ago did have some success running the football. Penn State, which is probably should be a run-first team, they didn't have as much success against Oregon. But Fernando Mendoza, people have been talking about him as a Heisman guy, right? Transfer quarterback. I think he's a step up from their quarterback last year, to be honest with you. And it's that RPO style from Cincinnati, right? Are they going to be able to threat to run the football? And then that opens up the play action stuff, and then you can try to push the football down the football field, because then that gives you a chance. Indiana's got some guys on the outside. I really like those two receivers, Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper. They can make plays, but if there isn't a threat of a run game, I don't know if Indiana is going to be in a spot where they can throw the football well enough with Mendoza against that front of Oregon to have success in the game. And Iowa proved the other week that there's kind of a blueprint to sit in there and hang with Indiana, and it's get some pressure on the quarterback, as they certainly pressured Mendoza, and they didn't score a ton of points in that game, and it wasn't exactly super pretty for Indiana last week against Iowa. But that's also kind of just Iowa as a team, right? They're going to give you a really good fight each and every week. Kirk Ferentz, that's just kind of what they're built on, that program, and I he's had a lot of success there, and has played in a lot of tough physical games. But some people are coming into this game and saying, does Indiana really have a shot? We'll find out early if they can run the football and how that offensive line matches up against the defensive front of Oregon. Dante Moore, if the season ended today, he would be my Heisman Trophy winner. He's really good. Kind of looks like a guy that could have success at the NFL level there as well. He's poised. Just the environment, the whiteout, Happy Valley, he was unflappable in that game, but he's also only been sacked once. And that's an offensive line, as I alluded to, that was rebuilt during the transfer portal. They've done a tremendous job. And if Indiana could perhaps find a way to get Dante Moore under siege, something he hasn't really seen this year, could that be beneficial for them? I'm staying away. I'm rooting for a really good game. The environment's going to be incredible at Autzen. Game day, I believe, is there. 7.5 is the line. And, I've been higher on others than Indiana. I had them at 5 this week. And, we'll see how they look. But Oregon is the real deal. Oregon is excellent. And that should be a phenomenal college football game. All right, 3 more here before we get into our best bets of the weekend. Oklahoma, Texas, Red River. Oklahoma is ranked number 6. Texas falls to being unranked after the loss to Florida in the Swamp last week. Texas, by the way, favored in the game. 1.5-point favorites. Kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. Now, there's a good chance that Oklahoma is without John Mateer. That's kind of up in the air. He had the hand surgery a couple of weeks ago. There was the Chipotle rumor about some guy ran into Mateer at Chipotle, and Mateer said he was going to play in the Red River game. Oklahoma obviously keeping it close to the vest. Venables did say he hasn't done any good stuff at practice, so don't know really. I don't really even have a gut feeling on whether or not Mateer will play in the game. Michael Hawkins is their backup, and he'll get to start. Should Mateer not be able to go, Hawkins did play in the Red River game last year, and if you're an Oklahoma fan, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because they got absolutely blown out in the game last year and only scored 3 points. Texas's corner, their top corner, Malik Muhammad, he's up in the air. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? But these two defenses are real, both of them. And I said last week that I thought the Texas defense was second in the country behind Ohio State. Well, now I think they're third. And Oklahoma is second. Oklahoma's really, really good on defense. Venables has them flying around, making plays. I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game, which in the history of this rivalry doesn't really happen a ton. But I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game. And offensively, I even with a backup quarterback, it's hard for me to realize or figure out why Texas is favored in this game. Maybe Vegas knows something. But based on what you've seen from this Texas offense against, FBS opponents has not been good at all. I mean, yeah, they've looked all right against Sam Houston State, who's one of the worst programs in Division I over the course of the past few years. But what is the reason that, they're going to figure things out offensively and it's going to look a lot better? I just don't know if there's necessarily much to go on. I've been very clear that I'm still an Arch Manning believer, and I still believe in him. Might not happen this year, but at some point it will happen for him, and he did make some big throws in the Florida game, but that's a really good defense, and he really struggled against Ohio State. They're not as good as Ohio State defensively, but they might be the next best thing, and we'll see. I'm staying away from that game. Texas 1.5 favored. That is at 3:30 on Saturday. Two more, Florida and Texas A&M. Kind of a sneaky good game here as, Florida has talent. They have players. They have recruits. It's just they haven't been able to put it together, but they put it together pretty nicely last week. They were able to get after Arch Manning, do some stuff defensively, and the splash plays were there in the game for DJ Lagway, something he's very reliant on, by the way. And I think that's kind of what needs to happen again for Florida if they want to compete in this game. Which Florida is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that has looked horrible in the beginning of the year where Lagway was thrown to the other team, or is it the team that we saw last week against Texas? A&M, I really like them, and I kind of view them as the best team in the SEC. I'll just go out there and say it. I view them as the best team in the SEC right now. Why? It's because they have an ability to win multiple different ways. You saw it against Notre Dame, throwing the football with Marcel Reed. You saw it against Auburn. And to some points, to some extent, Mississippi State, where it's defense, running the football. So they have different blueprints in which they can win, which I think in college football is very, very important. And they do that. And, Florida does have, Dallas Wilson, who's been back, true freshman wide receiver. He's really, really good, and maybe he can help them out. But A&M, here's a stat for you. Their defense has allowed 1 third down conversion on their previous 23 third downs, which is a really unbelievable stat there. And, Texas A&M, they could do a really good job on defense. That environment, I think Kyle Field at night is the toughest place to play in college football. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't think it is. That place is going to be absolutely flipped upside down in that game, and we will revisit that in a little bit for our best bets of the weekend. And also Michigan USC, great football game. It was phenomenal last year at the Big House. Now they're in the Coliseum at USC. Obviously a different quarterback for both teams, as you have the true freshman Underwood for Michigan and Jordan Mayaba taking the reins, obviously, for USC, and he's done a really nice job. They do have the loss against Illinois, and this is a really big game. A really big game for Lincoln Riley. It feels like he needs to win one of these games here at USC. They've looked a lot better this year, and I think they're more physical this year than they've ever been, but he needs that kind of a signature win. And USC 2.5-point favorites in this game. Their starting left tackle might not play. Their center is also hurt. That's an issue against that front. Jayshon Barham of Michigan, he's a great player, and he's going to be looking to get after the passer there as well. Michigan's got some receivers that are kind of stepping up here. They've got a couple of freshmen that are really, really good. Andrew Marsh starting to pop on the scene, and obviously Underwood, the quarterback. And this is a guy that he's looked unflappable as a freshman. The moment clearly not too big for him, and he's played good football this year. And like him or not, he looks like he's going to be a really good college quarterback. And I would give I get it's across the country, and in the Big Ten when you have these teams going to California, right? We saw it certainly with Penn State last week. They go to UCLA and they just weren't ready to go, and they get beat. Well, we'll see if that happens to Michigan. I don't know if Sharon Moore necessarily will let that happen, but USC 2.5-point favorites in that game, and we will revisit that game in a little bit as well. But let's finish today's show, as we always do, with our best bets of the weekend. We got 5 of them coming your way this week, 3 at the collegiate level and 2 at the professional level. So here we go. At noon, a game that we already talked about here on the show, Alabama going to Missouri. They are 2.5-point favorites. If you've been watching the entirety of the show, I kind of laid out why this isn't exactly the best matchup in the world for Missouri in this game. However, there is one player that is really, really good at playing football, and that is Ty Simpson, and I think he will do enough to prevail Alabama to victory in this football game. They are the best passing attack in the country, and I think they will show that again against Missouri. Do I have some reservations considering the fact that they just played 2 massive games and they have the 3rd Saturday in October, and obviously Tennessee is waiting in the wings next week? Yep, a little bit, but I think some people have disrespected the Alabama run game maybe a little bit too much. I get early in the year it was really, really bad, but they ran the football when they had to and did a good job of it last week with Jam Miller. Getting him back is a whole new dynamic to their offense. They kind of had the committee going with Kevin Riley and Richard Young getting some carries there as well, and they're still going to have Riley involved in this game, but Jam Miller gives them a whole different element to what they can do offensively. They had some success running the football, and their offensive line has been a lot more physical over the course of the past 2 weeks. Going into the year, it was supposed to be one of the best units in the country, or one of the best offensive lines in the country, I should say, and they got completely bullied and smashed right in the mouth against Florida State, so I do have some reservations because it's still the same group. It's still the same 5 guys taking the field, so that could kind of rear its ugly head at any given moment. But DeBoer has a chip on his shoulder. He's coaching with some serious intensity, some serious fire, and some anger as well, which I think is very positive, especially for this team this year after what went down in week 1 in Tallahassee. And Ty Simpson's playing at the position better than anybody in the country. And I think in this game, if he can eliminate the negative play, which I think you saw a little bit too much against Vanderbilt, where it's like, dude, just throw it away. Like, it ain't there. You tried to extend. It still ain't there. Throw it away. And he took some bad sacks in that game. Don't think he's going to be able to get away with that here in this game against Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz, really good head coach. And obviously if Missouri wins this game, they are on the map and they've got a road directly to the playoff if they're able to come through and win this game. But I'm a big believer in what Kalen DeBoer's been doing in Alabama. I'm a big believer in Ty Simpson. And that receiving core, it might not be what Ohio State has or even what Texas A&M has, but those boys are for real now, and I think they're going to find a way to score some points despite the fact Missouri has a really solid defense. So give me Alabama to cover -2.5. Just talked about Texas A&M and Florida. That's a 7.5-point spread in favor of the home team, Texas A&M. We kind of questioned what Florida team is going to show up. I don't know. You don't know. And Billy Napier, he doesn't know either what Florida team is going to show up in this game. I'm a big believer in Texas A&M. I think they're the most complete team in the SEC here to this point. Marcel Reed has elevated his game to another level. Really like what he's been able to do. And really the environment is really the kicker for me. Kyle Field at night, I don't think it gets more difficult. And if you haven't watched a Texas A&M game at home at night, I really encourage you to flip on the TV and check it out because, the place goes absolutely nuts, and there are tons of people in that stadium, and it gets really, really loud, and it gets really, really hard for opposing football teams. I think Texas A&M, after, they beat Auburn, but it wasn't, easy by any stretch. Same with Mississippi State. They pulled away at the end, but it was probably a little bit too closer than it should have been early on. I think you'll see a really dominant performance behind that home crowd with Texas A&M. Those receivers, Craver and Concepcion, they're really, really good. Marcel Reed can get him the football. Elko's going to have him ready to go. And, Billy Napier, we talked about earlier in the week about his annual try to save his job tour. Not sure if he's going to be able to pull it off this year. Give me A&M -7.5. Michigan and USC. I don't like doing this. I'm not an Ohio State fan at all. but I also don't like betting or rooting for Michigan at all. But I just think, I get they're going across the country and playing in California in the Coliseum, and to me, that's the only way you can get to this number as far as favoring USC in this game. I just think Michigan is a whole different level of physicality than USC. I think USC is more tough and more physical than last year, but I just don't see them being able to slow down the running attack. I think, Michigan's going to try to dominate the time of possession, what they have at the running back spot. Justice Haynes, he's an unbelievable football player. Jordan Marshall, Cincinnati guy, right? He's their second guy. He's really good. The moment doesn't appear to be too big for Underwood. He's escaping, creating plays, outside of the pocket, using his legs when he has to, getting the football down the football field. And that Michigan defense is still really, really good. They're a threat. It's going to be tough for USC to run the football in this game with Wayman Jordan. Certainly if USC can run it, then they definitely have a really good chance. And Lincoln Riley, I've been impressed with what he said in the lead up to this game. He clearly has a chip on his shoulder. He understands how big of a game this is for him as a head coach. I'm rooting for USC to win this game, but I just don't think that's the smart pick. I'm going to take Michigan plus 2.5 on the road to cover. Now, our two games in the National Football League. I alluded to this earlier in the year. Earlier in the show, I should say. I have not taken the Bengals on this show as a best bet of the weekend to this point, and this might be suicide. This might be a horrible decision, but 14.5 points in an NFL football game. Come on. I mean, that hook, too. It's in 14.5 for Cincinnati. I think you're going to see this team take a step in the right direction, which it's hard not to, right? Because it's pretty hard to go in the wrong direction, because I don't know if there's much more room you can go as far as I mean backwards, right? I don't know if that can really be done here at this point. Joe Flacco, is he going to look great? No. I mean, he's been here for a few days. There's going to be bumps in the roads. There's going to be some procedural stuff. There's going to be issues getting the play in. By the way, we've spent so much time talking about Joe Flacco here this week, and one thing we haven't mentioned that we probably should is that Zach Taylor really struggles getting the play in timely enough, right? And you saw that with Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. Well, now he's going to be doing that with a guy that's only been here for a few days. So that could get really hairy really quickly if that's an issue once again for Zach. But 14.5, that's a lot of points. I think Joe Flacco's going to not make as many crucial mistakes as Jake Browning. He might throw a pick or two, but he's going to take the completion when it's there. He's going to make the right call. He's going to throw it out of bounds. Right? He's going to make those kinds of decisions that an NFL quarterback needs to make, and I think that will allow Cincinnati to keep it within this massive number. And maybe it's some wishful thinking, but I've got Cincinnati plus 14.5. Give me the Bengals to cover. And then lastly here, Sunday Night Football, and there are some times where you look at a line and you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then, as somebody that bets on the game, you either make the decision of, I'm going to try to be sharp here, right? Or I'm going to fall right into the trap. And sometimes, sometimes one way is the right way to do it. Sometimes the other way is the right way to do it. And we haven't done this on this show yet where it's a weird line and we try to be a little bit sharp here. But that's what we're going to do. The Chiefs are favored by 2.5 points against the Detroit Lions, who we have as number one in our power rankings, and many people across the country do as well. And the Lions are the best team in football right now. And they're underdogs on the road at Arrowhead Stadium. But I'm going to take the Chiefs, minus 2.5. 90% of the public money is on Detroit here in this spot. Only 10%. When you see a discrepancy like that, usually Vegas knows something. And we're going to see. Maybe Vegas doesn't know anything and we're just equally foolish to Vegas. But I'm going to say Vegas knows something here, and I'm going to take Kansas City minus 2.5 to get the victory at home, cover the spread, and kind of improve here and kind of get back in this the thick of things. I think some people are like, they're going to beat Jacksonville and kind of be on their way here, and now they lose to Jacksonville. And I was like, well, you're playing Detroit, dude. It might be the best team in football. You lose that game, you're really behind the 8 ball. I think it's only a matter of time before Kansas City goes on a run. I don't love saying that, but I just think that is the truth. Even if they lose this game to Detroit, which they might, I think they will go on a run and be a playoff team in the AFC. But, give me the Chiefs minus 2.5. Mahomes, by the way, he's playing really good football. There's been some, issues there on offense and hasn't looked as clean as usually an Andy Reid offense does. Rashee Rice coming back soon. He's not going to be back for this game, but that'll certainly help them in the future. The pick was bad against the Jags. He just simply didn't see Lloyd, the linebacker, and that completely swung the momentum of that game. But I've got the Chiefs here at home, -2.5 to cover. One more time, Alabama on the road, -2.5 at Missouri. Texas A&M, -7.5 at home against Florida. Michigan +2.5 on the road at USC. Bengals +14.5 on the road at Lambeau Field against the Packers, and the Chiefs -2.5 at home against the Detroit Lions. Open and transparent, 9-14 on the year. Hopefully we can shorten that gap a little bit and get back on the winning side of the scoreboard as it relates to our best bets of the weekend. Just about out of time here on the show. Great Friday show, as always. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. MLB playoffs, obviously a big one today. The Mariners and the Tigers. Mariners at home are underdogs, and they're the higher seed in the game there as well. So that's a little bit interesting, but they are going against Skubal, who you could argue is the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. He went earlier in the series, and the Mariners actually won that game. So I think Seattle will get it done here in this game tonight. Slight underdogs. I saw +120 this morning. I think now it's dropped to like +105. But Kirby's going for the Mariners. I mean, seemingly everybody they throw out there is a really, really good pitcher there as well. I'm rooting for the Mariners because I think as a baseball fan, they have a better shot at beating the Blue Jays, or giving the Blue Jays a series, I should say. I don't see the Tigers really competing in a 7-game set with Toronto. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think Seattle gets it done tonight, and I'm certainly hoping for that there as well. The Cubbies, we said they would beat the Brewers. I don't know how they're in this spot, to be completely honest with you, after those first 2 games, and they've somehow won back-to-back games at Wrigley. That game is tomorrow night. Game 5, series swings back to Milwaukee, and certainly will be an interesting game. So while those great college football games are happening tomorrow, also have a really good baseball game, and the winner of that will obviously play the Dodgers, who did they get lucky? I don't know. I mean, people are going to bang on Kirk Herring, the pitcher for Philadelphia. You feel sick for the guy that he made that he was put in that spot and then wasn't able to make the play. But they played 11 innings of baseball, and the Phillies had 1 run, so people try to pin it on him. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be pinned on him. Phillies had plenty of opportunities in that game. They weren't able to execute, and it's unfortunate that seasons end like that. I mean, you see it all the time, right? Like in the NBA playoffs, right? A guy misses a free throw. March Madness, right? Somebody misses a free throw. Or in football, Mark Andrews, he drops it or whatever. For me, it just feels like it's worse in baseball, right? Because you play 162 stinking games all year, and you're playing every day, and then something like that completely ends your season. So it stings, and it hurts, and you feel for guys when that happens in the postseason of any sport. But baseball in particular it's gutting when that happens, and people are going to rip him apart for that, and hopefully he can remain strong and be able to bounce back and have a great year next year. But the Dodgers were the better team in that series, and even if the Phillies were able to pull off that game, even going back to Philadelphia, I would have had full faith that the Dodgers get it done. They belong in the CS. I think they were the better team. And I think ultimately at the end of the day that was proven, but it just stinks that was kind of the situation with how it played out. But I'm hoping for chalk. As a fan, obviously I picked the Cubs here on the show, but I think if it was Brewers, Dodgers, and Mariners, Blue Jays, I mean, what a CS that would be on both sides. But ultimately we'll see what happens, and it should be a lot of fun. Great postseason baseball tonight and over the course of the next couple of days as well. Appreciate everyone, as always, for hanging out with us here on the show. Another great week here at the show. And next week we will try to get some guests on, maybe do some more new things. But I'm looking forward to it certainly there as well. And hopefully you guys are probably like, wow, you just talked for an hour and there's no sponsor, there's no ad, there's no nothing. Hopefully that changes here sooner rather than later. And that certainly will add a new element to the show once that comes around there as well. But appreciate everyone as always, and have a great weekend, everybody. We will talk to you on Monday.